What is critical thinking? That's a great question, and I'm glad you asked. It's obvious that we think all the time, but how often do we think about how we think? Let's take a close look at critical thinking. To be honest, there are many definitions of critical thinking. You can search and find dozens and dozens, each a bit different, but they all seem to boil down to what Dr. Richard Paul once said: critical thinking is the art of analyzing and evaluating thinking with a view to improving it. That's a small sentence that says quite a lot. Let's take it apart and see what we find. First, thinking critically is an art, and like any art, it takes time and practice to get good at it. We need our imagination to see connections, like a detective looking for patterns that help find who did it. Just as art reflects how the artist looks at the world, critical thinking helps us understand how someone's thinking or actions reflects how they see the world. We think all the time, but often we don't look closely at thinking, at how we see things and how our thinking affects how we and others see the world. Critical thinking involves taking apart thinking and looking at how that thinking is constructed. Like an archaeologist, the critical thinking looks for artifacts of reasoning from how a person writes or talks or acts. It gives us the tools to dig out those clues and reconstruct the reasoning of the thinker. When we have figured out how a person is thinking, then it's time to look for the quality of the thinking. Hold it up to a high standard of excellence. We can see if the reasoning is based on sound ideas and whether we can rely on the conclusion the thinker gives us. So we follow a set of criteria, a rubric that helps us to check the quality of thinking and whether it can be trusted. What is powerful about critical thinking is that it helps us to not only look into our own thinking, but also the thinking of others. We can analyze what one character thinks of another, what the author thinks about each character, and even what you think about what the author thinks about each character. Critical thinking can help us get into anyone's mind. We can always grow as thinkers, to become better at analyzing and evaluating our thinking and the thinking of others. We need to practice enough to make it a habit. Then we can make better decisions and act in accordance with what we have carefully reasoned. In the end, we become better people, understanding our place in the world and what we can do to improve it. Critical thinking is the art of analyzing and evaluating thinking with a view to improving